Lesson 3, Len and Maths. They fight crime. All right, here we go, folks. Welcome to Lesson 3 on Python 3. Yay! All right, so we've got 3 learning intentions again for today, and here they are for the notes, which will be good for your glossaries, etc., etc. The first question we're going to ask is, how long is a string? And the answer to that is len. It's not really .len in this case. It used to be .len, but in this particular case, how long is a string? It is len. We are going to be converting strings to numbers. So this is where we're going to be introducing another data type. And actually 2 data types, really. And then we are also going to be doing maths with Python. So yes, it's time for the maths class. And this is the point where I pause and you all sort of probably run for the hills. All right, so I'm going to jump to the second thing which you'll be looking at, which is converting strings to numbers, but not quite, because we've got to convert strings to numbers, which means we're converting one data type into another data type. What is that data type? It, ladies and gentlemen, is what we call a integer. Woo! So what is an integer? It is numbers. Now, there are 2 different types of integers. I'm going to get rid of the exclamation mark just to stop any concerns there. So, the interesting thing about the integer data type is that they are numbers, yes, but they are specifically whole numbers. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 4,378, those are integers. There's a second particular data type in relation to numbers called floating integers. Floats. Now these are every other number. So if you want a decimal point in your number, it's going to be a floating integer. So 1.3752222 is going to be a floating integer. 1 is a whole number, so therefore it's going to be a normal integer. Now for today, we are going to be dealing with just integers. However, you might have to deal with floats for the challenge. We'll see what happens there, and I'll let you work on that one. But those are 2 brand new data types. We have strings, integers, and floating integers. There is a 4th data type. It's called a Boolean. We are not going to be worrying about that at this point. Now, the first question, how long is a string? So in this particular case, how long is a string? It is len. Now, len is the function for length. Funnily enough, in this particular case, often a spoon is in fact a spoon. So len will tell us the length of the string that we've input. So if we look here at the code, we've got Boris. Now Boris is a string inside of the variable name. Now Boris is 5 characters long. So if we were to use len, the output should be 5. Now how do we use it? Well, it's a function that we can run. So one way you could do it, which is a bit of a long way, but it will still work, is that you can create another variable for the length. In this particular case, it's going to be length. So this is if you want to store the length to use at a different point. But the length is going to be equal to len, and because it's a function, throw in our brackets, and the argument we use is what we want to check the length of. We're then going to print length, and survey says 5. Bingo. So let's double check to make sure that that's right. Let's turn Boris into Borai. So there's only 4 characters in the string, and survey says 4. There we go. So that helps us figure out the length of the string, which we need to use in lots of different places. One, and a fairly easy one to think about, is password length. If you want to set a specific length for the passwords in your program, for example, you want it to be 8 characters or more, run a len. So the person inputs the password, you put it through the len, and if the password is too short, you say, nah, mate, have some more characters, please. If the password is long enough, then it can go through. That, by the way, may come into session 4 when we do if statements, so you might want to remember that one. But that's len. The other way we could do it is, rather than just putting it into its own variable, when we come down to doing the print, I could just print len name. So I've got brackets and brackets there, so you need to kind of watch that. But remember, REPL will do the brackets for you if you let it. But always double check your code in case you get a syntax error. But if I run that, there we go. I get the same information. Let's give Boris his actual name back, and we're back to 5. So that's another way you can do it, but this doesn't store the len in a variable. So if you need to use the len in some way, shape, and form, you should store it inside of a variable. Okay, so that is how long a string is. It is len. Use len and you will be able to use that for a lot of different things. Now, let's do a little bit of maths. So the mathematical operations, which you should find listed in a chart in Classroom or on the website, are pretty much what you would expect. You can add, you can subtract, you can times, you can divide, you can cough, and you can also find things to the power of. So those are the different basic mathematical operations that you can do, but the problem is that you can't do them with numbers. Now, let's say that you had created a program to get a person, so let's use some math terms. Let's say create a variable called x. Now x is going to be equal to the input of enter a number. Then let's get y and have it equal to another input of enter another number. Then let's go print x plus y. Right, let's run this, and I'm going to put in the number 2, and I'm going to put in the number 2. Now 2 plus 2 should equal 4. In this case, it apparently equals 22, which is wrong, in case you're wondering. It's really wrong, okay? But in this case, the plus symbol isn't working for us the way we want it to because it's adding two strings together. So what we want to do is we actually want to add two numbers together, which is why we need to start converting. That's right. So what we need to do is we're going to put in another little variable here. We're going to have a, and a is going to equal to int x. Now int, the function, converts whatever is inside the argument to an integer. So in this case, a is going to become equal to whatever x is, but as a number, okay? And I can do the same down here for y. So we're going to create the variable b, and we're going to have b equal the integer of y. Now, I need to then print a plus b instead of x plus y. We go enter a number 2, enter another number 2, and we actually have maths because now we are adding integers together. Hooray! That was probably a little bit confusing though. Let me show you something else that you can actually do. Rather than introducing these two new variables, I just wanted to do that to kind of show you how it could work if you separated them out, because you could still have x there as a string, and you could also still have y there as a string because you've got two other variables sitting there to be their integer versions of each other. Or you could just set x equal to the integer of itself. So this is where you kind of reassign a variable that's already stored. So you take what's in x and then you turn it into the new kind of x that you want it to be. So in this case, an integer. We do the same with y, and then if we go to print x plus y again, 2 plus 2 should equal to 4, and there we go. So that's another way you can do it. You change the variable. All right, there is another way to do this as well, which is rather than doing them on a separate line, if you want them to be an integer when you input them, we do it in the input. To do that though, you run the int first. So the integer function runs, and then inside the integer function is the input. So what that basically means is convert into an integer whatever this is. So as you can see, I've done that there for the x. I'll do it here for the y. So please convert whatever is inside this into an integer. We run this program, and the bins outside get emptied. We enter a number 2, enter another number 2, and 2. 2 plus 2 equals 4. Yay! So we've converted our strings into integers. Now, guess what? We can convert them back. Okay, so I printed x plus y there, but you'll note this, if I want to print, actually what I can do is, let's instead of going printing x plus y, let's make z equal to x plus y. And then we're going to print the answer is comma z. Now, let's see what happens here. Enter a number 2, enter another number 2. The answer is 4. Yay, that works. Sometimes it doesn't let us work that way. So I believe if I actually went plus z like that, 2 plus 2 doesn't let us work because it is a integer, and it thinks that plus symbol in this particular case is trying to concatenate, which means it needs to be a string. So, a couple of ways that we can do this. Primarily what we're going to be doing is we're going to be turning the integer back into a string, and we could do that inside the print like so. str, funnily enough, will convert whatever is inside that function's argument brackets into a string. So if we run this again, 2 plus 2, the answer is 4. So that's another way you can do it. You can also use that str function in the other ways that we were using the int functions. There's no reason to use them on an input because you automatically input everything as a string. That would be silly. But you can still use it to create a variable, to change another variable into a string and store it inside that new variable, etc., etc. Go nuts with it. That is entirely up to you. But this is, as you can see now, we can go x times y. So I'll actually go back to, rather than making that a string, I'm just going to go back to using the comma because it will make life easy. So let's make the numbers times each other. So 2 and 234. The answer is 468. So as you can see now, we can do a lot of maths. Now here's the trick with the maths. You may remember BODMAS, which is your order of operations, essentially. Do your brackets and ordinal numbers, etc., etc., etc. With Python, you have to do the BODMAS yourself. If you were to put all the calculations in the same line or in order, unless you haven't done your BODMAS right, it will do them exactly as they are done. So you have to make sure that you know BODMAS. The computer will not do it for you. You can build a calculator to do it for you, or you can just do them correctly. So that's a very important thing with doing maths on this. So that's maths. That is converting strings to numbers, and that's the length of strings, okay? Use the symbols for the different mathematical operations. Remember your order of operations, and that's going to be very critical for the next challenge, which is going to combine a lot of what you've learned in the past few sessions, and you have to make a temperature converter, okay? So the instructions for that are on Classroom, and good luck.